The unions really feel that they need to have this protectionism clause here to protect iron and steel?
Well, I wouldn't call it a protectionism clause. It is about government procurement. We have some of these provisions already in U.S. law. So this is just making sure that in the economic stimulus, which is an American economic stimulus funded by American taxpayer dollars, that to the maximum extent possible, compliant with our international obligations, we are doing everything we can to support American workers and American manufacturers.
All right, you don't see it as protectionism. Let's get a view, take a look from across the Atlantic. Howard, how do you see it from your vantage point?
Well, perhaps I'm in the minority, but I generally agree that to work our way through this crisis, there may have to be a degree of selective protectionism. I abhor protectionism in all its forms, but we should remember that it's never really gone away. It's been there in China, it's been there in Japan, it's been in parts of the European Union too. Just take the Boeing-Airbus spat; it's never been resolved yet, and it's been with the WTO for nearly 3 years. So protectionism never went away, but I do think this crisis is so deep, and likely so protracted and so difficult that a degree of protectionism is going to be required.
Thea, are you going to use the AFL-CIO's lobbyists in Washington to pressure President Obama? He said he wants to pull that clause out of the stimulus package.
No, what he said actually is that he wants to make sure that we are in compliance with our international trade obligations. And
that's not what I heard him say. I mean, he said that protectionism was bad.
He said that we should be in compliance with our international obligations, and it's perfectly possible to do that because we've in fact negotiated in our government procurement agreements a certain amount of flexibility, a certain amount of exceptions, and we have already said in our trade obligations that we're going to use our federal highway and transit funds to buy American-made products.
You think that protects the workers, Thea?
Yes, absolutely it does.
Well, let me, let's put it over to Howard. I mean, you mentioned Airbus. How does it protect the Boeing workers if suddenly the Europeans all say, you know what, we should just buy Airbus, forget Boeing?
They already do that. So other countries...
Let's ask Howard. Let Howard, he lives over there.
Yes, well, I mean, I want to see a fair and free system where Boeing can supply to any potential customer around the world, and Airbus can do the same. But it hasn't been a level playing field because governments in Europe have supported and given development funds to Airbus. So that in itself is a form of protectionism. Now, I fully understand President Obama is walking a very, very difficult tightrope here. Yes, he has played it down a bit today. I think necessary for political reasons. What we want to see here, though, is communication between the US and the European Union, and also Canada. Canada is a very important part of this with what the US is proposing. So communication, talk, understanding, trying to work together, and then I think the small part of protectionism the previous speaker was talking about will actually be allowable.
Thea, you get the final word here, and that is about jobs. I mean, that's really what this is all about. And the unions have to have an understanding, don't they, that without the global economy, a lot more jobs are going to go away, and protectionism just doesn't fit in that global economy.
It's not about protectionism. We're not talking about raising tariffs. We're talking about whether the government can use its own tax dollars to support good jobs in our own communities. And of course we're part of the global economy. We're going to continue to be a part of the global economy. But right now we run a $700 billion trade deficit. So the U.S. economy is plenty open. And in fact, the Europeans and the Canadians have just as stringent provisions on buy European and buy Canadian in their own procurement things. So it's not something that the United States is doing in isolation. We all want to use the international flexibility that we've negotiated to the maximum extent possible to create good jobs at home.